Hi, welcome to Leadership Talks, the weekly webinar series hosted by Security Systems News. My name is Spencer Ives. I'm the managing editor for Security Systems News. And today I'll be talking with Alan Stoddard, VP and General Manager for Situational Intelligence Solutions at Verint. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Spencer. How are you today?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So, start out. Could you tell the audience a bit about who Verint is at the company, and what it is that you do?
Sure. Again, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about Verint and Situational Intelligence Solutions. Verint is a billion-dollar software-focused company who primarily focuses on creating actionable intelligence to create enhanced productivity in companies, and about a third of that company is focused on physical and cyber security. So we're part of that organization, really driven for the last 20 plus years in how we use actionable intelligence to both streamline operations for companies to improve their response to threats, reduce their costs, and improve their overall safety in both a physical and an IT sense. So very excited to be part of that organization as we see greater drive in the world towards converged security and overlapping threats between physical and cyber, and the advent of IT and AI to be able to leverage that sweet spot to provide solutions to mission critical enterprise operations to, as I said, improve their safety, reduce their costs, and improve their responsiveness.
Fantastic. So now, what are some factors that are driving growth in the enterprise and mission critical security market?
Well, I think they're very similar to what we all see in the security space, right? We've got greater and greater threats coming from all different vectors, whether it's terrorism, vandalism, internal sabotage, and whatever vectors we see on the physical side being combined these days with certainly greater IT threats that combine with to create really meaningful and significant impacts on an organization. I think that the element here that is unique when we talk about mission critical is that these are elements that can create existential threats to a company, right? Either loss of life, loss of brand image, significant shutdown in operations, the sorts of things where stopping a train or clearing a terminal or sabotage to a factory can cost millions and billions of dollars if they're not managed real time. And the real difference I think that we're focusing on these days is not moving away from the responsive approach to security and really looking at how we manage security real time or near real time. And what we're looking to do is to get ahead of threats, preferably to prevent them before they happen, but certainly to be able to manage and respond to them in real time, as opposed to looking at things retroactively. And there's just greater, as the impact on organizations rises, the need for that real-time response increases, the need for these to be up 24/7. As a vital part of business continuity operations increases, and that's really what we refer to as the mission critical security space.
Mm-hmm. And now, can you explain the idea of the Intelligent Security Operations Center and how that plays a role in what you do?
Absolutely. So the concept is that in these mission critical security markets, you need an integrated, holistic response to manage all the various aspects of the security threat. And what we've seen in the past is all sorts of different point solutions from a security perspective. You may have an intrusion system, a video system, an access control system, whatever the case may be. And the reality is they tended to operate on islands. You also may have analytics that take place, video analytics sitting behind the VMS system, or some other business analytics that sit behind some of the other systems. But again, they tend to be siloed and work independently. And what that does is creates multiple layers of work for the security operations team. It increases the burden in terms of coordination and collaboration between those individuals and those systems. It creates barriers to automating those systems, and it really precludes being able to apply any of the advanced analytics tools that are starting to come on the market across different domains. And when you think about it, what the world is driving us to is really broad-based intelligence, where we want to be able to look at what's happening in one area of a business or an environment and understand the potential impact elsewhere, and coordinate our efforts holistically across the entire system and the entire enterprise. So that brings us to the concept of the Intelligent SOC, or the Intelligent Security Operations Center. And really the whole concept there is being able to bring in and aggregate multiple various subsystems, initially in the security arena, but it's extensible to areas beyond that. If you look at building management systems as an example, bring those into a single interface for the operator, but more importantly into a single kind of database with metadata coming into that system, and then expose all of that to an analytics layer where we can start to leverage advanced analytics tools, artificial intelligence, deep learning tools to look at the entirety of the space and kind of divine intelligence in terms of what may be happening across different domains, and how those will impact the business as a whole, and provide intelligence to the operator in real time so they can respond to and manage those situations. It also provides a vehicle for integrating the response to all those activities, and directly engaging responders real time on mobile devices, and providing all of that in a consolidated tool and system that can be tracked for audit purposes after the fact. So, the focus really there on being able to aggregate all of the subsystems, provide a common interface into the operators, provide a common metadata environment for analytics, provide a common coordinated response mechanism, and essentially at the end of the day, streamline the resources necessary, speed response to incidents, and improve that response while reducing costs.
What technologies are really at the core of this holistic ISOC approach?
Well, as we indicated, all this starts to be enabled when we move to the IP world. But most importantly, the ability to provide this common metadata environment where we can start to leverage AI and deep learning tools to look at this the common database, and look at vast quantities of data to draw out trends to get ahead of a situation with predictive intelligence and predictive analytics. So we look at IP cameras, IP-based tools, IP-based infrastructure. We start to look at the emergence of cloud, very large databases, and the ability to maintain and manage those, AI and AI engines that are able to be deployed across those domains to look at and wean out trends. They really become the heart, and the core technologies. All this based in and then enabled with the cloud, and with the ability to bring in disparate systems through mobile devices, through cloud-based inputs, and bring those into a common view. So it's IT driven, it's AI driven, and it's IP driven.
Mm-hmm. How can systems integrators embrace this concept? How can it help their business?
Well, and Spencer, I think that's one of the really interesting elements of this is the change that this impacts on vendors, on integrators, on end customers themselves, as well as vendors. Whenever you start to move up the value chain, it's definitely a double-edged sword. These sorts of systems start to transform the deployment from a kind of straightforward integration, hook it pieces together, to being a solution provider. And what are the elements that end user requires, and how can the various systems be stitched together to really drive answers to the business problems that they have? How do you integrate all of those systems, which adds technical complexity, and understanding the business requirements then to be able to stitch together a business solution for that end user. And then obviously the complexity of the system and the IT and the AI associated with that. So the value here is that you turn from being a kind of hardware, IT software integrator to a business partner who understands the business environment and how to tailor and deliver some of these solutions to meet the specific needs and requirements of that specific end user. So that really changes the dynamic, adds a much greater value add for the vendor, puts them in a more stronger position of partnership with their customer. But the challenge on the flip side, of course, is that they need to be prepared to provide that sort of business level support, and they also need to have the technical competence to deliver a much more complex solution and support that for the customer. So multiple requirements. I think the upside is worth it in terms of really moving up the value chain and becoming a business partner, but it certainly changes the requirements and the demands on the system integrator, changes the skills that they have to have. It even changes the approach that they need to take in terms of positioning themselves, selling their services and working with their end user customer.
Mm-hmm. And considering the ISOC and new technologies being adopted in today's market, how can systems integrators stay ahead of that learning curve?
Well, and that obviously is kind of the $60 million question. With those challenges in front of them, how do they succeed in that marketplace? And it really is a combination of a couple elements. First is the core competencies, making sure they understand the technology trends that are taking place, and that means becoming much more savvy in an IT networking world. One of the things that we see today is that a lot of traditional integrators are still struggling with becoming really competent across the entirety of the organization in terms of deep networking skills, which is an absolute foundation for, I think, all systems going forward, and certainly for the ISOC environment. So the foundational networking skills are a must across the entirety of the organization. Becoming and really starting to look at where they want to focus and add value. And a lot of that comes down to, I think, selecting specific verticals where they can become a knowledgeable partner and have expertise and excellence, not just in terms of the security technologies that they're going to provide, but an understanding of the businesses that they're partnering with and working with. As that becomes a key element, it's almost impossible for most integrators to really drive that in a very broadly based fashion. And I think the advantage there is to look at specific verticals, specific areas where they can differentiate themselves, build their expertise, and build their knowledge base. And then certainly taking advantage of specific training programs and opportunities that exist, whether it's in the ISOC, the specific elements, really understanding that this becomes more of a long-term partnership with the end user, that it's not a static environment anymore. One of the things that this environment provides is standard operating procedures, so that an operator can automate responses that may come in, as an example. So say, if you have a security breach in this access door, and you get a signal from this camera, then you want this sort of alarm. You want the fire system to potentially perform in some way, shape, or form. You want these notifications to go out to certain responders. Those are all tools that that integrator can support and help tailor for the end customer. But they need to be knowledgeable enough about that environment to be able to do that successfully. But B, that's a dynamic environment. Those will change as the business changes, the organization changes. So it's more of an ongoing partnership that integrators going to need to be prepared to engage with and the end user. So, having the resources internally that are trained and knowledgeable to support that, having the core expertise on the networking side, becoming knowledgeable in specific business verticals where they can add value and provide a true partnership with their end user, and then really getting ahead of the curve with technology training with their manufacturer partners, I think, are the key areas to focus on.
Mm-hmm. And as a manufacturer, what do you do to ensure your partners are maximizing their skills and growing their business?
Yeah, and this has been a real learning experience for us as well. Verint has evolved over the last several years from being essentially a VMS provider to entering the iSOC space, and so we've gone through the same sort of transition as a manufacturer. And what we've learned as we've gone through that process is it really is an organizational change from top to bottom. It isn't just a class or a product that we offer. It is understanding how we work with our partners to help them sell in a different environment, and providing that day-to-day partnership and training and joint selling approach where we can share with them the solution-based selling and the scenario-based selling that really addresses the different needs in this environment. It is ensuring that we've got the right sort of partner enablement tools, whether it's technical training, whether it's collateral, brochures, et cetera, to enable those partners to talk about this sort of solution in a very different environment. It's making sure that we've got the support engine behind. Obviously, and we always get into these situations. Technology is great when it works, but complexity can add to increases in debugging and support challenges. So obviously, being able to step up our ability to provide support to those vendors behind the scenes to ensure that they're in a position, both in terms of their knowledge, but then having somebody to refer back to when they need direct support for their end customers in those environments. But also, I think, kind of the long-term support for those partners in terms of building and growing and developing their business. And that comes back to really focusing on our own verticals where we can add value and knowledge, looking at the mission-critical space, which we believe is very much focused on the transportation market, safe city, healthcare, corrections, government, and developing the expertise where we're in a position to share that with our partners, help them understand that, be a backstop to them in those environments. And really, I think it's just an attitude of being able to work as partners, as a trusted partner, hand in glove, and see the end user as a common customer that we're going to support together and support successfully for the long term. So that really is our philosophy.
Mm-hmm. And now, looking down the road a little bit, where do you see some of these technologies evolving from here?
Well, we're really at the very cusp of this evolution, I believe. And when we talk about the concepts of AI and deep learning, what we're creating is essentially the palette upon which a lot of these elements are going to explode. So once we've got the environment where the data is available in the common database, the ability to start to look at new and creative and really unique and very tailored and specific tools at the analytics level, I think is going to explode going forward. We'll see very broad-based solutions that come from maybe some of the traditional and larger suppliers in the market. We'll start to see very niche solutions. I think you'll see an explosion of really customized people that are doing essentially consulting and developing unique and custom analytics capabilities for individual customers or individual vertical marketplace that can take advantage of the overall infrastructure that's in place. So I think we're at the very beginning edge of that. Quite honestly, with the power and capability that deep learning possesses, I think it's almost hard to predict some of the solutions that we'll see down the road. But certainly, that's a big part of the focus going forward. I also think we'll see more and more migration to cloud in the future. Security has been a little bit behind a lot of the rest of the IT world in terms of that transition for a number of different reasons. Some of them sound reasons in terms of cost and technical and cybersecurity. Some of them, I think, through inertia. But I think we'll see a much more rapid evolution, migration to cloud-based solutions, distributed deployment, and potentially as part of that SaaS and software as a service as we move forward, that will all really change, I think, the traditional ways that vendors go to market and the kind of support that they need from their manufacturing partners.
I think it'll certainly be interesting to see where these solutions go from here. Now, unfortunately, it does look like we're out of time, but again, Alan, I really want to thank you for taking some time today to talk with me and our attendees here about Verint and about what this market looks like.
I enjoyed it, Spencer. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And thank you to all of our attendees for signing in. You can find this webinar weekly at 12:30 on Thursdays. Thank you very much.